Hey, good people. Sammy Ash here, Executive Director of the Ash Academy, and your host. I'm just here for our final bit of housekeeping. September 19th, 2020 is our deadline for those student nomination forms. Here's your opportunity to highlight a student of color who made a difference in the community. Now, I know you're going to have to get creative because we've been in quarantine and on various phases of lockdown. But our motto this year has been Pivot 2020 because with all the twists and turns, we've been able to make lemonade without lemons at times. So we're looking for that person in your life who has been resourceful and still made a positive impact. All right, so we also would like to take this time to shout out one of our sponsors, Masterclass. They offer online classes created for students of all skill levels, and their instructors just so happen to be some of the best in the world, with notable people including Shonda Rhimes, Spike Lee, Robin Roberts, and many more. We're super excited to be ambassadors for such an incredible platform and are looking forward to sharing this with our students of color. Now, don't forget to go grab your tickets for our virtual Mentors and Mimosas Gala coming October 10th, 2020. The ticket link will be in the description box. So now let's get started with the show. Welcome everyone to another episode of the Ash Academy's Inspire, Uplift, Engage podcast. I am Sammy Ash, the Executive Director. I've said this so many times and I still mess up on it. I am Sammy Ash, the Executive Director of the Ash Academy and your host. We are joined today by Hannah Ashley, who is a UI designer. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, we're going to start this off with what exactly do you do, and what does UI design? What is that actually?
So UI stands for user interface. I design layouts for their e-commerce website. When you go shop for tools, a lot of those layouts are, or at least the fill-in of those layouts are my designs, I guess you could say. Granted, I work with a team of people. They're not just mine, and they have to go through a ton of like approval stages before they get approved. But that's pretty much what I do. It kind of stems from actually user experience and user interface are pretty much blended as is like the same kind of role, but user experience is more directed towards how like a user would literally experience a web page or a product or an application. When you get into a bigger company, like a huge corporate company, those roles become very like distinct. Um, for whatever reason, except like I was still learning about. But yeah, so if you're at a smaller company, you'll actually be more of a UX UI designer, or sometimes they call them product designers. And then as you get into a bigger, much bigger company, you'll have to like, they'll usually make you pick one path or the other. Mm-hmm.
So we hear designer in there, and just for the Ash Academy, we're all about getting students of color into the arts or STEM fields, so the science, technology, engineering, and math. But are you kind of in the middle? Is it still the arts, like designers in there, but it's actually a STEM field? So what would you say? Like, where do you fit on the gamut between the two?
I feel like I'm a blend between the arts and I would say technology of
Okay.
like that STEM abbreviation. You definitely do a lot of creative work, but you do have to be pretty adept with like software and adapting to different kinds of software. Different companies use different softwares. So a lot of the
Mhm.
softwares that you do use in design in relation to what I'm doing, they're all about the same. So your skills will translate over pretty easily, but you do have to be like open to being flexible.
Awesome. So let's talk about your journey. How did you get to that job, that career? Um,
Oh
like
man.
where does someone start to get into that path?
I this is okay. So this is not as I did not take a straight path to where I'm at, right? So I actually graduated with a degree with the Bachelor's of Science in Information Technology.
Okay.
And I graduated with an IT degree because I was a computer science, degree pursuant. Like I was on the path and I decided I did no longer wanted to do that. And so I finished school out with IT. I took an internship with Harman Kardon in IT. Did not like it. Like it was like the worst experience. Like the in school and out of school were completely different things to me. So so then I scrambled around and actually fell into like a field marketing gig where I was, doing, I was working for Essentia Water. It was basically like a water pusher, just like slanging water out. But it was a really eye-opening experience because it kind of opened me into marketing, which is something I hadn't considered before, which subsequently led me down the path of pursuing marketing as a career. Which is how I met you, right? And
Yes.
became a marketing specialist. And from there is when I realized like working on like the web design team, but for marketing was when I was looking at, well, why is it that our clients are having a hard time with the layout of this website? How come we can't change it? Like what is the thought process that goes behind like the structure of a website? Like how do we make sure that when someone goes to a website, it's like a really nice experience for them? It's like it's easy to find stuff, it's easy to pay for like rent or whatever they're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what took me down the road of UX UI, just by sheer accident, really. And now here I am. So I actually ended up taking like a what they would call like a boot camp
Okay.
through a school called Design Lab. It was fully remote, completely accelerated, kicked my butt. Like it was very, very tough, but I had a mentor through the whole thing, and that's how I got this job that I have now. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Um, so let's go to those moments of transition. Like what led you to say IT is really just not for me? Because I'm sure there's many people out there that are like, you know what? I might be getting this degree. I might like, okay, I'm gonna finish it, but
Mm-hmm.
there's something else out there for me that's really what I want to go into. So what kind of helped you through those moments of like, there's got to be something else?
Because for me, because I learned the hard way. So I like got a job, or I got an internship. It was paid with a great company. Harman Kardon is, they have a bunch of different businesses like JBL speakers and
Mhm.
the like. And I, had like I said, it was a great position, internship, part-time, paid well. And I sat every day in the office and I just did not like it. It was just nothing. I don't know if it was because what I was learning, in school was a little bit different the way it applied outside. Or maybe I had just outgrown like, the
Mhm.
course. But to be honest, if I really think back on it now, if I'm being super like blunt with myself, I probably went away from the arts in the very beginning because I was too afraid to pursue it.
Hmm.
And so I kind of made like this full circle. So
It's how it always happens.
yeah. Right.
Eventually, you're gonna come back to the arts. There's no way around it. So you did mention mentorship. How did that come about? Because we've definitely seen a need, especially this generation coming up, Gen Z.
Mhm.
I didn't have as many mentors as I would have hoped to have.
Yeah.
Nothing like official. So what was that like for you? Like, was that the first time you had a mentor professionally? Did you have them growing up to kind of guide you?
Um, so with the Design Lab, they pair you with a mentor.
Mhm.
So like it was just part of the program. That's pretty much like it was I would say like the key thing that made me sign up for the program and made me save money and basically take out a small loan to do it.
Mhm.
And it was with someone who had been in like the product design or UX design industry like for a very long time. So he was able to give me a lot of guidance, you
Mhm.
know. To top it off, I don't want to like single this out, but he was also Asian, which kind of helped. I'm gonna say just a little
Representation
bit. Yeah, it
matters.
was just a little bit. It was kind of nice. But before that, before I went in through that whole thing, I kind of just felt it out, I guess. That's why it took me so long. It literally took me, I think, 7 years to get my my college degree. It took me even longer to figure out that I do actually like design, and I should still like pursue it, because coming out of high school, like I was, very focused on art, but I was told kind of at the get-go that it wasn't something that I should be doing. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think people need to hear about like how long it took you to get your degree, like to keep going. Like just
Yeah.
because you don't finish after 4 years, it's not the end of the world.
No.
Especially during that time, like I was like, I have got to finish in 4 years. Like I have
Mm-hmm.
got to. But like there was no real reason other than like spending more money on tuition. But like
Right.
there's really no rush. Like you
Exactly.
think at the time like there is a rush. So how was
Yes.
that for you? Like what kept you going?
It took me 7 years because I took a lot of breaks, right? So I would, right out of high school, I was admitted to UC Santa Barbara. I went there for a year. I basically dropped out. I stayed in Santa Barbara for a year without going to school because I had promised my roommate that I would stay. So I just, worked at a little shop. I think I was working at a chocolate shop at the time and just paying the rent until our lease was up. Um, and I think, from there, I like actually moved out of state for a little while,
Very
like,
trustworthy of you to stick to it just to not break the lease.
I made a promise. But yeah, like if you need to take a break from school because you've been pushed really hard through high school and you're burnt out, you should tell yourself that you're burnt out. It's okay that all of your friends are going to big universities and maybe you just want to go to community college. That's something that I wasn't told from the beginning, which I kind of wish I had been told, was like, you can go to community college. Like you can take your time there. One, it's way cheaper.
Hmm.
If you don't have parents to like help fund your college experience, honestly, I don't feel like you're going to miss out on too much if you just go to community college first and then do the transfer, and you'll be saving a ton of money. And the last thing you need is tens of thousands of dollars worth of debt, like, because nobody tells you about how much 20, 30, 40, 50 grand of debt is until you get out and you start working and you're like, this is a lot of money. It's going to take me forever to pay off.
Oh my gosh, you're triggering me. Yeah. It's like that 6 months after graduation, like, hey,
Yeah,
due, it is due. And the lower you're paying, like that interest is just knocking back whatever you actually are putting into that pool.
exactly.
So you
Yeah.
end up paying that for more than 10 years because it's like, okay, you got to pay it back within 10 years. And
Right.
like nobody's doing that unless they have it to
No.
just cover that. So then it ends up being the rest of your life you could be spending a part
Exactly.
of your income on student loans. A greater issue we will touch on later, but
Okay.
back to the UI design.
Mhm.
What would be like the most challenging part of your job?
Ooh. So, okay, in an ideal situation, I would say the most challenging part of my job would be to like identifying the problems that our users are having, right? That's one of like, and then how to apply visual design and principles of design to help them.
Okay.
But if I'm being completely honest about my situation right now, it's that my role, it has kind of turned a little bit, it's a little strange. I don't know if it's, I don't think they were super transparent with me about what I was supposed to be doing here, but because I was hired on as a UI designer, but right now I'm actually doing a lot of digital design work or graphic design work. And I would understand that if it was at a bigger company or a smaller company, I should say, where you're kind of like, I'm going to wear like 5 different hats because I'm the only person and there's only one other person. But at a huge company like this one, where there are digital designers by name, by profession on other teams who we work with, it's I don't know why I'm doing their job. Like it's like, so I think the hardest part right now in a corporate job as a designer is to navigate the politics of the office. I would say if you're gunning for a design position, if you can, get into like an agency, a digital design agency, because it'll teach you how to iterate quickly. you'll be going through projects in like very quick sprints, and it'll be fairly stressful from what I've heard. But you'll gain a lot of experience, and your portfolio will like blossom with the variety of things that you're working on, and it will apply to like your actual position, instead of being kind of like siphoned off into like, well, we don't actually have UI design projects at the moment, so we're just going to give you a bunch of other things to do, which is, pretty common in a big company.
Well, that's great to highlight just in case people are wondering what they could be put put on their caseload.
Yeah,
It's a possibility that you might be doing this, and then that's the little not limited to part of your job description.
right.
We might
Definitely
give you something
clarify.
else.
That's just,
So,
I'm learning as I go, so
mhm. I
definitely
think that's
clarify.
by design everywhere. You might
Yeah.
think that you're getting into one thing, and it might kind of branch off. Especially during COVID times, we have to mention that
Hmm.
we were recording this during some sort of lockdown procedure or quarantine or not fully open. So business is not as usual right now.
Right.
So that could be, a bit of retention as well. Like, hey, we're not going to let people go, but you might have to do something else. And you're like, oh,
Right.
okay, well, better than the other option.
Right.
So you did mention portfolio.
Hmm.
So does that mean that you do some type of freelance outside of, and is that kind of the landscape of doing what you do in general, where you have a day job and there might be some type of freelance work what you also do? Is that just the name of the game?
Um, I don't know. I would say if you have a very fulfilling full-time job, you probably won't spend too much time doing freelance work unless it's through a friend or family, unless you just really have a lot of time on your hands. I know, and like, especially right now, since we're all working from home, you do have a lot more time to like work on side projects if you really wanted to, just because you can get your work done and still work on other things.
Mhm.
Um, but I would say it really just depends on your preference. I know I've heard of designers who only freelance and they make enough money, let's say in 6 months, they'll just work really, really hard and then they'll just take a few months off before they find a new gig. The downside of that is you will not have benefits, or there's always like trade-offs, right? You're not gonna have
That's an
benefits,
intense
and you're not
six
gonna have,
months too.
yeah.
Just imagining.
But some people, it seems like the landscape, at least these days, is that companies will hire you on for maybe a 3 month or 6 month contract to test you out before taking you on full time. Sometimes companies don't even have the work that they might think they have in 6 months, and then they won't have the budget to keep you. But it's like no harm, no foul, because it was a contract job
Mhm.
anyways. Other times you might pull a contract with somebody and you'll be done in say 6 months, and then 6 months after that they might have something else come up, and if they really liked you, they'll contact you again because it's easier, like. um but yeah, it really just depends. As far as like my portfolio is concerned, right now, like what I'm working on, I don't usually put in my portfolio. um I think it's a little weird to navigate. Like, I don't know exactly what I can put in my portfolio from there, just because it goes through so many teams and so many
Mhm.
modifications. So my original design doesn't exactly look like my original design anymore by the time it goes live. But
Yeah.
there's certain things that are key. But yeah, sometimes, it goes in this company, it goes all the way up to the owner and then all the way back down.
Mm.
So it goes through a lot of different gates. Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting.
Hmm.
So, what would you say would be the most rewarding part of your job?
Um, I would just say I think what got me into UX UI was the ability to help like users have a better experience, whether it's, on the web, whether it's through your phone, whether it's through apps. Um, More than enough times I've been super frustrated, using a product, and this is supposed to be the field that answers like those frustrations. And honestly, it's almost supposed to be like you can try and predict the frustrations before, you start designing, because you don't want to have to like make something and then it becomes finalized and then someone is frustrated with it and then you fix it. So you go through a lot of prototyping beforehand before you release the final product. Um, Being able to make something that someone has a nice experience with is like, that's probably the best part, you know, because you're giving something back essentially.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely made me a lot more self-aware, just like working with clients and like meeting those needs,
Yeah.
especially with like nudge marketing where there's a pop-up that happens. And like if I'm talking to a client and a pop-up happens and I immediately close it, I have to be self-aware to be like, hey guys, we need to change how that fires because
Right.
if I immediately go to close it, like, what do you think the user is doing? So yeah,
Exactly.
so that's been awesome. Now, what has been some? Uh, I'm gonna start with the bad advice. What's been some bad advice you've gotten over the years? Like we want to, put some words to it so people stop giving it out.
Oh, bad advice. You can't do something because it's not going to make you any money. That is
Hmm.
probably the worst advice I received from like when I was 17 or 18.
Hmm.
Um, there is definitely a good balance between pursuing your passion, right? And then not making any money, right? Like if your
Hmm.
passion tends to be something where a lot of people are like, well, you're not, you know, you have to be in the top 5% before you can make a lot of money. I would take that with a grain of salt, just because if you really love doing something, you should just do it. You know, like you should go for it. You know, if that means you have to work another job while you pursue it, I guarantee that if you love it enough, you will do fine. Like you might not be driving like, you know, the fanciest cars right off the get go. Like, you know, you compared to maybe someone who went 7 years through medical school and is now making 200 grand a year, but you will get there, you know, like you'll find a way to make it work for you. Um, I think that's probably been like the worst advice. It's just not kind of staying true to your own course. I was like very easily influenced when I was younger. Like, okay, I'm going to go to college. And I didn't even know what I wanted to do in college. You know, like that's a huge decision to make. You know, that's no one ever tells you that.
Absolutely. The rest of your life should not be decided at 18. I'm sorry.
Exactly.
18 is not a good year for me
No.
to decide the rest of my life. I don't even know him at this point, to
Right.
be completely honest. Um, so how big is patience and kind of, your career is supposed to be a constantly evolving thing.
Mhm.
How big was that, I guess, realization to realize that, hey, everything doesn't need to be decided now, or it might take some time before I get to that actual point, or I needed to be at this certain job before I was going to even know that I needed to go into this next step. Um, like how big was that process for you?
I mean, patience is was a huge factor. I mean, I don't know if I would call it patience as much it was just stubbornness to just see things through my way after a while. And it was a lot, there was a lot of like failure. There was a lot of times where like when I moved out of state and I was 19, I didn't know anything. I'm like, I'm just going to move. I'm going to get a new job, you know, like it'll be fine. And I had no experience. I was working like 3 jobs at one point. I was barely making rent
Oh my
out in the
gosh.
Midwest, which is, you know, it's not very expensive compared to living in California, right? But
Mhm.
I was barely making ends meet. I was eating like ramen noodles, 10 cent, you know, from Walmart, you know, like, and living paycheck to paycheck. And I had never experienced that before because I had come from my parents' house. And, you know, I was fortunate enough to live like in a nice, you know, upbringing where I
Mhm.
had pretty much everything given to me. And well, not everything, but when I got out into the real world and had to like really work and had to really see how other people lived and how some people don't go to school, you know, some people just go straight into career. And no one really told me that that's okay, you know, like that's,
Yeah.
you know, coming from this like an Asian household, like standard is super high, you know, and like you can't like that's like something that's been ingrained in you from the beginning. And if you decide to kind of veer a little bit off course, everyone thinks that you're just like a complete misfit and something's going wrong, you know? Like, and so I would say through like from 18 to now, or even before that to now, just remembering to stay like, again, like stay true to you as much as you can. Granted, you're going to change, like everything's going to change, and then try and stay kind to yourself, because that's still something that I struggle with today. You know, I still push myself pretty hard, and I still like get really, sometimes I get down, you know, if I don't perform or I don't, you know, do something I thought I was going to be able to do. But you will like struggle, and that's okay, you know, because those are all like points of growth, I guess, from like what I understand it to be. Yeah.
So culturally speaking, was it like a stated like expectation, or was it like it's in the air, like
Oh, it was
you
both. You know, it was both.
okay. Because I had in the air where there was an expectation for college, like there
Mhm.
you go. There was no like, oh, like what are you doing after high school? Like you're going to college was the expectation that was just in the air.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, like for you, was it like, oh, we're gonna talk about it, but it's also like in the air as well?
Oh, yeah, it was definitely stated like you're going. And not only are you going, but you're going to fund, like I remember my dad telling me like you're going to get a third of your tuition is going to be paid for with scholarships. I was like, from where? You know, like I don't know where we get these scholarships. At a third, like we'll do a third of, like, you know, we'll pay for the third, and then the other third you have to take out a loan. I was like, what's a loan? You know, like I don't know, what do you mean? Like, you know, you just, and then he's like, and then you just have to figure it out by yourself. And I was like, what? He's like, but you have to go to a good school. You can't really go to a state school. It has to be like at least a UC. And then he'd pull like your cousins are going to like an Ivy League school kind of thing, you know, which is a huge thing, I guess. And I don't know if other Asian families do this, but mine did. You know, they played the comparison game, you know, and I'm like the first in my family to go to college. So it was like a big deal that I
Oh
went
wow.
and that I
Okay.
succeeded. Yeah. So of course, like after that first year, it was a little ugly when I left school.
I can only imagine. Well, we'll put a pin on that. What's some of the best advice you've ever received?
uh, Best advice has just been, I mean, this sounds super cliche, but like to believe in yourself, like just it really matters, because you can't, the only battle you have in the morning and determining like what you're going to do that day, or I don't know, if in the afternoon if you sleep late, whatever, but like, you know, whatever you do that day is with yourself, right? You're the one who's going to determine like, am I going to need to, you know, if it's later in life for you and you've decided to do a career change, are you going to take the extra classes? Are you going to invest in yourself? You know, like you're the only one, you know, you can't pin like your issues on other people or your situation. You know, you have to like dig yourself out of it. If you know, you might not have put yourself in the hole, but you're gonna have to dig yourself out of the hole no matter how like you swing it, right? So I think like, yeah, believing in yourself. And I mean, if you've made it this far, to consider like, if you have like a passion, and you know, you might not know really, especially when you're like young, you know, you might not really know, like, oh, like I don't know if I'm going to make it, or I don't know if I'm going to be able to get out there and become this, you know, great whatever. Or I don't see people like me that are out there doing it. It, you know, you don't think about so much of like no one's carved the path, like just do it, you know, because, and if you fall down, like get back up, you know, because the only failure is when you quit, right? Like that's probably the best advice I've gotten. Yeah.
So, and you are mentioning some references to representation. So,
Yes.
what's your take on it? Because you're kind of putting a new spin on it. Like, if you don't see yourself, you might be the pioneer. We need you to show the other people that look
Yeah.
like you. So, you might be the first one. So, what's your take on that?
uh, like, so it's fun, I was just talking about this um the other day, and it's like when I came out of high school, I wanted to be a film editor. Like there was no rhyme or reason. I just liked editing films. Okay, like there, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I was like, I love doing this, so I'm gonna do this. But I didn't really see anyone, like I didn't know anybody or like really like have a role model, I guess you could say, in the film industry. I didn't know a lot of, for instance, like Asian American like people in film, really. And this was, it was a long time ago. I'm not to date myself, but like this was a while ago.
We
And
are the
so
same year, so we don't need to date either of ourselves. We will leave that out.
right. um but yeah, I was just thinking about it, and it was I honestly, sometimes I wish I had that, if I had seen, oh, like, there's somebody that is like me or comes from a similar background like mine, and they went through like the strict parent, like, you have to go to like and get your bachelor's degree. You can't go to a film school, or you can't, do all these things that are different. Like you got to be, like an Asian, my family was like lawyer, doctor, engineer, like very stereotypical, like exactly what you hear from other like Asian families.
Mhm.
And like you can't make money doing that, like kind of mentality, because both my parents came from different countries, so they're not going to come all the way over here and be like, and you're doing what with your life. But representation definitely matters. But I would say if you don't see somebody doing what you think you can do, or what you like to do, or what you just enjoy doing, even if it's for right now, just you should do it. Because there might be someone, like if you're like, for example, you're in high school and you're about to like leave and try and pursue something, there might be someone who's like in the 5th grade who will be in your position, and then instead of leaning on the fact that like, oh, I wasn't given like a path, right, maybe you're the person who's supposed to carve the path, kind of thing. Like I didn't have that mindset back then, but I have it more now.
Once again, can't decide the rest of your life at 18.
Exactly.
But I think that's an incredible note, especially for representation being so huge for us. And kind of the reason why I even started this foundation, like I
Mm,
could have easily just joined someone else's initiative. I have a unique perspective on this, bringing arts and STEM together,
right.
but not as STEAM, just as the two umbrellas separately.
Yes.
Just got to make
Yes.
that distinction. But no, but I have my own unique perspective, and I don't want to wait for someone else to be that role. I'm the role model. I've
Right.
had to step into different situations as mentors, but that's why I'm doing this. Like you might have to realize, like, yeah, you deserve to be in that room. You deserve to be in these spaces. You are the one. You are starting it, and bring up everybody else that's in the 5th grade and kindergarten
Yeah.
that's looking up. So excellent point. I love that. Now, I think would be a great point to segue into our Q&A section. So let's get into it. Who is your biggest inspiration?
Um, my biggest inspiration is my
I
mom.
so awesome. I need to do like a master cut of everyone's response to that question. Like, who gets the answer?
Mom.
Awesome. Do you want to expand on why?
So something I like draw a lot of motivation from is her own personal story. She's from Singapore. She grew up in like, I don't know if it was physically abusive, but it was definitely like a verbally abusive household. And she's the oldest of 3. And so her 2 younger sisters didn't really get too much of that because they were too young, but because she's the oldest, she experienced a lot of it. And so when she worked really hard, the minute she could get a job, she worked in like a a law office as like an administrative assistant or a secretary. And the minute she turned 18, she came here, and she was visiting a family member, I think in Maryland, I believe, on the East Coast. And it was like her great aunt, I believe, or maybe her aunt, which is my great aunt. But she was like, oh, I'm just visiting, my family says hello. And she was here for like 2 weeks. Then it was like 4 weeks. And my aunt was like, when are you going home? And she's like, I'm leaving soon. And she somehow managed to make a friend, like a girlfriend, in the time that she was there. And that girlfriend was like, come with me to California. My mom's just like, I'm going. Like there was no, because she did not want to go back to that situation.
Mm-hmm.
And so she and she's, it's like really scary, right? You come to a brand new country, you don't know anybody,
Mm-hmm.
you make a friend, you hope that friend treats you well.
Mm-hmm.
And then she moved from one state, literally from one side of the country to the other. And then within a short time, like that's when she met my dad, who I think had already had his citizenship here.
Okay.
And that's how she was able to stay. But it was just like, when she told me that story, I was like, well, I what am I complaining about? I gotta work hard too. And like, especially given like what I've seen her do, like, with our family and the fact that she's been able to support me and like my brother, and like she worked really hard, she built a business from nothing. So you're just kind of like, well, like I can't not be as driven as that. I come from that, and that's like, I think if you can find, it doesn't have to be your parent, but if you can find anyone with a story like that, you're like, oh, well,
Awesome.
yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So next question is,
Mhm.
who do you hope to uplift with your work?
My community, I think and honestly, like, maybe other people or maybe other kids who've been in similar situations where, you don't have to come out of a really impoverished situation to have a situation, like you might have more of an advantage. Like I've always seen myself as like, I didn't come out like of a very poor household, but I have a lot of friends, who's kind of heard their stories.
Mhm.
But your own struggle and their own struggle, they're two different things. But I would like to like give back, and help however I can. And if that's through like great design or education, like that's what I'm hoping to do in the future.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're doing it now just by existing, No, but seriously, representation matters. Being on this podcast, showing that you're doing this work, it's very important. Um, you never know that fifth grader who's out there that watches this comes across it. Hopefully they're not saying the bad parts that we're mentioning, but all the good stuff, hopefully they're retaining.
Yeah.
So last question is, how do you stay engaged with your motivation?
Mm. That one, I think.
That's another one.
um, like I would say, always try and reflect on what got you into like what you're doing, like, because I have days where I wake up and I'm like, I don't want to do anything, or I don't feel like working, or like, is this really for me? And everyone seems like, oh, like you're supposed to love like what you're doing every day. It's like, well, you're not going to love the person even that you're with every day. Let's be honest. But in the long haul, you're going to love it. So it's fine.
Wow. So from there, what is next for you? What do you have coming up? Are you working on anything on the side? How can people find out about that?
So right now I'm just working remotely, so I'm just pretty much, I'm actually looking already for a new position, something that's going to fit me a little bit better. The culture that I'm experiencing is not something that I was looking for. But this is like my first corporate UI job. So I just took it the minute I got it. If you can afford not to do that, don't do it, I would say. But the experience is also somewhat invaluable because you learn a lot more about what you're looking for in a company and what you're looking for in a role, especially when the role is new. But sometimes you just have to do things like trial by fire. But other than that, like I have a couple websites that I have pretty much in the pipeline. I have a friend who's, wanting to redesign on his site, so I do that on the side. And then I have a friend of my mom's actually who's a life coach, and she wants to get like her site up as well. So that's just what I like, build websites on the side. Um,
So
but yeah, it's kind of like it's a little murky waters for me right now. So being honest, yeah,
hey, we need that reality.
yeah.
We also need to know if something is not completely aligned with, I guess, the corporate culture
Mm-hmm.
to what you're looking for. It's okay to look elsewhere,
Yes.
consider elsewhere, and confront some situations if you have to say, hey. So how do people get in contact with you? Where can we find you on the interwebs, social media?
So on Instagram, Instagram handle is Hannah Ashley Design. It's all one word.
Awesome.
And then I have a portfolio which you can reach to me, or website, I guess, hannahashleydesign.com. Pretty
Awesome.
simple. But yeah, those are my design sites. If you want to hit me up personally, I have like a separate Instagram for that too, which is Hannah Roves, but that's nothing to do with design. It's just like my like adventure pictures and things I like to do on the side. Yeah.
Well, tell
Hobbies.
us about that. What are these adventures? What are you doing to take an adventure?
Oh, well, I rock climb and I hike, and, I'm pretty like, I guess I could say I'm a bit of an outdoor enthusiast. I'm not honestly the biggest on camping because I didn't really grow up camping, but I camp and it's fun, but it's not like it's not like the end thing.
I will not camp. No, thank you. Mm.
It's totally it's
People who
whatever.
know why. That's another podcast all in itself. But I'm just saying, I'm not camping for anyone. Um, sorry, I will not. During COVID, though, how helpful was that for like mental health and just getting out? Like, did you do a lot of exercising that way?
Hmm.
Did you keep it going during this
Oh
time?
yeah, yeah. I mean, during like the strictest part of lockdown, we couldn't do anything because we
Mhm.
couldn't really go out much. But when they started lightening the rules a bit, and you can like actually go for a walk in nature, highly recommend. Like, definitely utilize like your local parks, your local trails, whatever is available to you, because getting outside after being inside all day is like it's night and day. It makes night, even if it's only for 20 minutes, just being out and like using your body to like walk along some dirt trail, and then maybe you see a bird go by, like that's much better than just staring at a screen. Highly
Mm.
recommend. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, everyone, this was Hannah Ashley. Thank you so much for joining us. I am Sammy Ash, the Executive Director of the Ash Academy. Everyone, have a good one. Bye.
Thank you.